Fortnite to the Apocalypse chapter 179 is out, and this was honestly another fantastic chapter, as we got something I wasn't fully expecting, but it does feel right in that we got a Chion and Tristan flashback, showcasing the start of their true dynamic and their relationship, and how Chion has started to become the way that he is in terms of being overall very attached to Tristan. And it's an expansion on Chion's backstory from when we got that bonus chapter a long time ago, which I'll touch on later. We also got the conclusion of this fight in a way that we expected, but it feels like the buttons are still being pushed for quote-unquote Tantris to be snapped back to reality with the right push. But before we jump into this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And if you want to see me talk about a whole bunch of different manga in detail, go check out the Pano Focus YouTube channel for my podcast Shonen Pulse, where me, Nox, and Yatogami talk about 9 separate manga within 3 different magazines on a weekly basis. It's a lot of fun. I think you guys will really enjoy it, whether you listen to it while driving, working out, at work, or just passing the time having it on in the background. But also, if you want to check out me talking about stuff that isn't anime and manga, go and check out my comic book channel, GW Comics, where I'm going to be talking about Marvel and DC when new issues come out, as well as just miscellaneous topics and discussions as well, like I would do here for anime and manga. So if you like comic books, go check that out. It's a lot of fun, it's a passion project, and I really do hope that you guys check it out. Now then, let's jump right into the chapter. Chapter 179 of Fortnite to the Apocalypse, titled Tristan and Chion, and the cover image is a young Chion, 12 years old as we later end up learning, with all 4 of his elemental spirits. Honestly, really nice artwork, and I like seeing Chion with his elemental spirits. It's really nice, and I would love to see a bit more of the potential dynamic he will have with these spirits. But on with the chapter. We continue from last week after Tristan goes full demon mode to break through the Gog-Magog combo that Chion ended up creating. And look, let me just say, I love Tristan just floating there in the sky, just having no real reactions right now in his demon state. It showcases just how far above he is from Chion in the grand scheme of things, and just how he's not paying him any mind in his demon state right now, just so we can learn more about what he thinks Tristan is. So I just like any depiction of Tristan in demon mode. It just adds that extra layer of menace to it. And later on in this chapter, we'll see a bit more of it. Chion says, "No one is as brave and kind-hearted as Prince Tristan. I know that better than anyone else." Tristan, seemingly uninterested, says, "Then can you show me what makes him so great?" As Tristan then begins to fly towards Chion to try and slash at him. Chion makes his golems try and block the attack, as Tristan just continuously slashes about and breaks apart the golems, but insane arm attacks, bringing it into pieces. As Tristan, while doing this, asks what makes Tristan, that Chion is talking about, so great. As Chion says, it's as clear as day. As we transition to 6 years ago in Leonis, when Chion was 12 years old. As he's in his room reading a book, a guard comes up to him and says, "Why don't we take a lovely walk for the courtyard to get some fresh air?" Someone comes in asking to give him some food, but Chion says, "I'll pass." As we get a brief rundown of what happened to him when he was a kid, when he was kidnapped by Vivien. Now, if you remember, I covered during a break week a bonus chapter that would end up being released later down the road for a volume release in Fortnite to the Apocalypse of Chion's, at least part of Chion's backstory when he was a young kid, like 3 or 4 years old. He was abducted by Vivien, and for years she was just treating him like her own child and emotionally and mentally manipulating him, which definitely affected his mental state, until eventually he learned his aptitude for summoning elemental spirits and breaking out on his own. But we get more context here, as obviously we know for sure Vivien didn't die in that fire that Chion left for her in that isolated hut, and then Chion met Isolde and Jade. But Chion goes on to say that once he came back, a bit of a wall was kind of erected between him and other people, more so emotionally, as he's lamenting in his room that Isolde and Jade are at a festival. We then get more context as people in the castle, like the guards and servants, were always on pins and needles around him, and his parents became incredibly overprotective and kept him locked in the castle day and night. This way, Vivien would not potentially return, or if she did, they would potentially try and capture her. So this shows that they're incredibly fearful of Vivien pulling the same stunt again. And so for years, I assume for 6 whole years, Chion has mostly been stuck in his room, not being able to leave on his own and do stuff without, multitudes of guards and servants or people just being incredibly nervous around him or trying too hard to do stuff with him around. So this does show that he has had a weird upbringing over the last few years, with Gil Thunder and Margaret being way too cautious with him, but it is kind of for good reason. It's then a young Tristan shows up, and he is 12 years old, just like Chion, coming to ask Chion to go horseback riding for his birthday, as it is about the time of his birthday. And I just love Chibi Tristan just being all happy-go-lucky, while Chion is just kind of ignoring him, saying, "Did His Majesty and Queen ask you to invite me? You don't have to fret about me." But Tristan just begins to stroll in and says, "Look, my mom and dad are out on a diplomatic work. I figure we can go out and play without getting in trouble. Staying in your room all day is boring, isn't it?" As Tristan just gets up all in Chion's face and just kind of bugs him, saying, "Isn't it? Come on, let's go out." As then Chion actually slaps Tristan away, saying, "I'm not holed up here because I want to be, alright? There's just no telling when that woman will come back and take me again. Mom and Dad are afraid enough that they put this room and made it covered by a barrier. What will you do if something happens to me?" Now, before I continue on with this chapter, first of all, I like the fact that despite everything going on with Tristan and Chion being cousins, since, Margaret and Elizabeth are technically still sisters, they were never that close, seemingly. Especially considering the fact that for 3 years, Chion was away, and now he's locked in a barrier-protected room to keep Vivien out. And so his personal life has kind of gone down the drain for the most part, and he hasn't had any real freedoms. And I like Tristan coming in to try and spend time with his only other family that he has, his cousin, to try and get him to have some fun. And I like when Tristan's just being the upbeat, happy guy that he is, always trying to bring people together. I like that part of Tristan. He's one of the kindest people in the series, and Chion, when he glazes Tristan, this is the one thing about Tristan that I don't blame him for glazing over. Tristan's got one of the kindest hearts out there, and I just like that it's shown. Also, interesting piece of information, this takes place a year before Grudge of Edinburgh. Now, remember in that 2-part movie that is canon on Netflix, which is The Grudge of Edinburgh, when Lancelot showed up and Tristan went to try and help when it came to Elizabeth getting cursed again, this time by Deathpierce and a Chaos Mage created by Arthur. A whole big kerfuffle when that happened. That happens when Tristan is 13. And at this point, chances are Tristan hadn't... This is most likely after the fact of Tristan injuring Lancelot and being afraid of his powers. But before The Grudge of Edinburgh, when Lancelot returned and Tristan got a bit more extra confidence in, people being around to keep him in line. This is an interesting thing to think about with what happens later on in the chapter, but I do find it interesting that this takes place after that point, especially with Tristan's actions later down the road in this flashback. But back to the chapter. After Chion says, "What do you do if she takes me again?" Instantly, a dark aura comes from behind Chion, as a hand comes in saying, "Oh, I've just broken that barrier now." As it's then Vivien shows up, looking even more creepy and disturbing as ever. Nakaba, we all despise Vivien so much, and her previous design helped sell it. But hey, let's keep her as incredibly disturbing looking as possible. That face, my lord, I want to punch it. But she grabs Chion by the neck and holds a dagger towards him. As it's then the guards come in as the barrier's been broken. Gil Thunder and Margaret show up to face Vivien, telling her to get her hands off Chion. But she sees them again and then basically just says, "Look, don't move or I'll slit his throat, I'll cut up his face," and all that. And Chion is obviously terrified, as he was still certain that he would have been taken again, taken to a place that he would never escape from. And no one in the room was willing to take any chances, not even his parents, because they were so afraid for his safety. But one person just started walking forward, and that was Tristan. As Vivien is just terrified of the fact that, oh, this is Meliodas and Elizabeth's kid. I might be screwed if he inherited stuff from his father. That look of sheer terror on her face when she learned that he was the prince. So she's right to be fearful of him. But she tries to do the same threat with Tristan. But Tristan, not fazed by it, says, "Chion, if I leave a scar that never goes away, I'll be your friend for life," with the most pure smile on his face. And after saying this, Chion says, "Okay," and in that instance when Vivien is about to do something, telling Tristan not to move, we get probably one of the best depictions of Demon Tristan as a child. And my God, this looks so cool and badass. The way the wings are shown to be more of a demonic paint look of his sheer aura. This is probably the best Tristan has looked in Demon State since the first time he used it in the manga. And I'm not gonna lie, this is probably gonna be the thumbnail. But yeah, this is the coolest and darkest Tristan has ever looked. And the fact that he went straight to demon mode shows that he thought this was the best chance he had at saving Chion, even if it meant injuring him. Which I will say is kind of contradictory to how he would have acted before Grudge of Edinburgh, because he was so hesitant, even in the fight against Death Pierce, to go into demon mode. Meanwhile, he does it in this instance with such confidence that he knows he will hurt Chion, but chances are he will survive, and he'll just take out all of his frustration on Vivien, is interesting to me, because he should still kind of have apprehensions of using his demon mode powers after he injured Lancelot in that one instance when he lost control for a brief second. And he's 12 years old. He hasn't mastered his demon mode to the extent where he can stay in control for a couple of seconds. But still, this is an interesting choice by Nakaba, and I don't know whether to call this an inconsistency or a retcon in terms of Tristan's thoughts on his demon powers, at least as a child at this point. I could still be overthinking it at this point and reading way too much into this instance, but let me know in the comments how you feel about this choice. How it leads up to how things go with this flashback, I like, but I do have questions on how this affects Tristan's overall growth and development from childhood through Grudge of Edinburgh to now. Let me know in the comments how you feel about this. But after Tristan goes demon mode, instantly a giant explosion happens in the room. Vivien is caught by guards and is completely bloody and destroyed. And seems like I wouldn't be surprised, because she was near death. Tristan did not hold back in that instance against her, and if he was left there, if he stayed there, she would have been dead. But everyone calls out for Chion, and it is implied that she did, in that instance, hurt Chion and mark him. As we then get a cut to some time later, 3 days later, to be specific, Tristan was in a land far away from Leonis, and he was rescued after using all of his power. Also, I just like that in this instance with Meliodas running towards Tristan in a crater, that one of the people in the background is obviously Thetis, so chances are she's the one that helped find him, which a very nice touch, and showcases that this is around the time when Thetis became a mage for Meliodas and Elizabeth and made her existence known as a reincarnation of Derriere. That's a nice little touch if you really look at it. But move a bit forward in the flashback to shortly after the incident, Tristan is training in the courtyard. As Chion comes up to him, Tristan says, "I guess that scar is here for good," which showcases that the scar that we saw on Chion's left eye at the start of the time skip was made by Tristan, technically, due to Tristan's actions to save him from Vivien. But it's then that Chion asked an important question. How were you able to do that? Everyone there was too afraid of hurting me to act, even my parents. But not you. Tristan smiles at him and says, "Because scarring you wouldn't be the worst thing, right? The worst would be abandoning you." And in that instance, Chion became the #1 Tristan stan. As he says, "Oh, always consider the worst case scenario, right?" And it's then in that instance where Chion comes up with his go-to mentality, and Tristan just like, "Yeah, that's a good way of putting it." As the two of them go off to ride horses together, as the two of them end up becoming like the best of friends. And I love seeing this type of backstory showcasing Tristan and Chion's early days when they were kids, not burdened by the fate of the world, with the whole Knights of Prophecy and Camelot, going down, all that stuff with Arthur, and Chion before he became an absolute asshole. But I love this. I really do. It adds a bit more layer to Tristan, as even though he is apprehensive about a lot of things, he seems to have the somewhat Meliodas and Elizabeth mentality of doing what they can to avoid the worst case scenario. And in that instance, he figured, yeah, this is a stalemate. I gotta act now, take out Vivien in an instant. If Chion does kind of get a scar, that's a decent price to pay so he could actually be safe, and I'm not going to abandon him. So that's nice. I still have my apprehensions on how Nakaba is writing Tristan in the past, with the contradictory nature of him using demon mode in that instance, with what we know about what happened in Grudge of Edinburgh, his history with Lancelot, and giving Lancelot that scar for losing control. But again, I might be overthinking things. Either way, it's a really nice flashback, and it showcases why Chion has so much trust and admiration for Tristan, and showcases their bond. So I really do like it. But that's where the flashback ends. As we cut back to the present, with Tristan still cutting up the Gogmagog golems, as Chion keeps trying to reach out to Tristan to open his eyes. But Tristan isn't listening right now, as all he's thinking is that he can only stay conscious in this form for about 3 minutes. After that, he'll no longer be himself. He's sure of it. Now, I like that this is actually confirmation Tristan has gone up in his time in demon mode, because before he said a few seconds to about a minute, he would quickly lose control. But now, 3 minutes. Not a bad time frame. Kind of wish it was more, but with how his mentality is like, I'm not surprised that his time limit isn't longer. But he says that it doesn't matter, so what? This is all for Isolde's sake. As we then see a singular page as Tristan is up in the air staring down Gog Magog. And in the next page, we get a close-up as a giant section of Gog Magog has been completely eviscerated, with Tristan just passing right through it. Most likely showcasing that in a fit of pure dark energy, just erased what remained of Gog Magog and destroyed him, with the golem raining down pellets from the aftermath of the slash in an instance. But after landing this blow, Tristan has a look of hesitation and regret on his face, as in that instance when Chion notices it, he kind of smiles. As the announcer says, Black Tristan's intense slash imbued with dark aura has smashed up that stout golem in one strike. What a shock. As Tristan fading out of his demon form, Chion says, that form, you hesitated. You feared your own force. That's your resolve to protect others. As he's falling off the edge of the ring, Chion says, just as I always knew, you are nothing but the Prince Tristan I know and love, as tears fall down from his face. As then with Tristan Tantris being announced as the winner of match 3 for Block B, he is now in goddess mode, holding up Tristan, keeping him from falling off the arena, asking, but who are all of them? As this ends the chapter. Now, Chion's comments about Tristan do match up with everything we know about Tristan and how he is, afraid of his own powers. Again, I do have my contradictory opinion on Tristan's behavior in the past, but either way, I still think it fits the story that's being told, and I think it's a great addition to Tristan's character and Chion and their whole entire relationship, and why Chion is ride or die for Tristan. He is the only person that, despite him getting injured because of Tristan, saw that someone was willing to do something to take out the person that was actively threatening him and didn't want him to be abandoned. So I really do appreciate it, and it's a nice layer to be added to Chion. And so from this point forward, as much as I hate it, until he acts like a dick again, I will now call Chion by the actual pronunciation as Chion. I know, character development for me. Let's see how long this lasts. But that's going to be it for this chapter. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think about Tristan and Chion's past and dynamic, and Tristan's decisions, and how do you feel about Tristan using demon mode to save Chion from Vivien, and if that is contradictory to what we previously was established with him as a kid by the time he reached Grudge of Edinburgh, with how he felt about his demon powers. Let me know. Tell me if I'm overthinking things. And also, what do you think is going to happen next? Because next, we got Isolde versus Pelio, and that match will most likely be done relatively quickly. And then we'll get to the real meat of this tournament. And what's more, if you haven't already, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day.